Hello, everybody. We are going to be starting the program in just a moment. This is a great time to find a seat if you do not have one. We do have some seats I'm seeing open on this side and over here as well, so everybody should have a seat. This is also a wonderful reminder to turn off your cell phones. I just did that myself with mine. All right, please be seated. Thank you so much, everybody.
Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat hadam, hachol ve'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat hadam. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
Thank you, Chazan Jeremy Stein, for the beautiful music that you played, and thank you, Cantor Martin Levson, for that lovely rendition of Eli Eli. You both set the tone for today's commemoration. I am Leo Kleiner, the son of Michael and Molly Kleiner of blessed memory, who were both Holocaust survivors. And with Felicia Miller, we are privileged to co-chair this year's Yom HaShoah commemoration. It is an honor to be together with everyone, and we welcome all of you, whether you are in person or joining us virtually. Today, we remember the 6 million Jews murdered during the Shoah, as well as Holocaust survivors. During Pesach, we asked, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilot? Why is this night different from all other nights? And as we gather for today's Yom HaShoah commemoration, we ask, why is this year's Yom HaShoah different than previous Yom HaShoah commemorations? The answer is that it has been 80 years since Nazi concentration camps were liberated by the Allies. 80 years since the world and the story of the Jewish people were changed forever. Now, more than ever, as we face rising anti-Semitism worldwide, we must never forget.
This annual commemoration is possible because of a long-standing partnership of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, the Harry and Rose Sampson Family Jewish Community Center, and the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Education Resource Center. Leo and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Yom HaShoah Committee, including the professional staff from all three of these organizations, and most especially Samantha Abramson and Michael Morris of HERC. With the thoughtful input from committee members, we are proud to once again come together as a community to affirm our Jewish identity, remember those who died, and honor the resilience of Holocaust survivors. We are blessed to have a survivor community in Milwaukee. We grieve for those survivors who have passed away since our last commemoration. In their memories and in the memory of the 6 million, we stop and mourn. I would now like to welcome Cantor Karen Berman of Congregation Shalom to offer our opening prayer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Besides being Cantor Berman, I am also the daughter and granddaughter of survivors. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live. For they are now a part of us as we remember them. Raising our voices in prayer or song is not totally unlike lifting our voices in protest. We want the Eternal's attention alerted. We pray for our audience to hear our wants and our needs, our feelings and our suffering. Sometimes we use our voices, but we always use our hearts. As we reflect on our memories, may the Holy One, praise be God, hear us and hear our ancestors whose memories are ever with us, because their memories are ever with us. May Adonai allow us not only to hear, but to listen, not only to dream, but also to do, so that we can bring those dreams to fruition. May God help us so that the phrase, never again, is not simply a catchphrase, but that never again is our mission. Baruch atah Adonai, shomea tefillah. Blessed is God who hears prayer.
Members of our survivor community will each kindle a memorial candle in memory of family members in the collective 6 million murdered during the Shoah. This serves as recognition that each victim of the Shoah has a name in their own personal history. Teen leaders in Milwaukee's Jewish community, including Rachel Meldman, Golan Altman-Schaefer, Libby Becker, Joey Arnstein, and Sheer Posner, will read the biographies of each candlelighter. We thank you for taking this leadership role and would like to note that some of the teens with us today are the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors themselves. We thank you all for taking this leadership role. This is living proof that the legacy and memory of Milwaukee's Holocaust survivors continue to be passed down to each and every one of us.
Al Better was born in Kovno, Lithuania in 1928. He was away at summer camp when Nazis invaded Lithuania. Albert was deported to labor and concentration camps where his father died, and he saw his mother and two of his sisters for the last time. In 1945, he was forced on a death march that lasted for 10 days. In May 1945, Albert was liberated by American troops. He later came to Milwaukee and served in the U.S. Army. After his service, Albert returned to Milwaukee. Al has 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren.
Werner Rickheimer was born in Karlsruhe, Germany in 1937, 4 years after the Nazis came to power. The Nazis deported Werner and his family to France, where they were imprisoned for 3 years in concentration camps. Through the dedication of relatives in Switzerland and the underground, Werner and his sister escaped to Switzerland, and in 1947, Werner and his sister came to Milwaukee, where their aunt and uncle raised them with much love. Werner served in the U.S. Army and had a career practicing dentistry. Werner has 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren.
Eva Zeret, born Eva Klein in Budapest, Hungary in 1936, is a survivor of the Budapest ghetto. After the Holocaust, Eva regained her health in the Carpathian Mountains with her family. During the post-war period, Eva and her husband and daughter were in Budapest when the Hungarian Revolution began, from which she and her first husband and child escaped on foot. Via Austria, Eva and her family immigrated to the United States in 1957 and later settled in Milwaukee. Eva has 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren.
Edith Herzenson's Pump's parents were forced to flee their homeland of Poland after the Nazis invaded on September 1st, 1939. She was born while her parents were hiding in Uzbekistan, then a part of the Soviet Union, where harsh living conditions made it difficult to raise a child. Edith and her parents were the only family members to survive. After the war, she and her parents were transported to a DP camp in Germany. Edie and her parents came to the United States in 1951. Edith has 3 children.
Peter Jacobson and his parents are from Bremen, Germany. They immigrated to the United States in 1938, shortly before Kristallnacht. After settling in New York City for 10 years, they came to Milwaukee, where they became active in the German Jewish community. Peter's father served as a president of the New Home Club for many years, a social organization that also met the needs of many who fled European oppression and persecution. Peter became an oral surgeon and practiced for many years. Peter has 2 children and 4 grandchildren. Sylvia Winter is lighting a candle in honor of her parents, Rose and Irving Gut. Rose was born in Luch, Poland, and her father was born in Dobromil, Poland. Rose was imprisoned in the Luch ghetto and then deported to Auschwitz in 1944 with her parents and youngest brother. She was the only one that survived. Her 2 older brothers had fled to Russia, and only one survived. Irving was in a labor camp in Poland, and his two sisters and parents did not survive the war. After the war, Rose and Irving met and lived in Munich for 4 years. In 1949, they immigrated to the United States. Rose and Irving had 2 children, 3 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren.
Will all the survivors in the audience please stand? Will all the children of survivors in the audience please stand? Will all descendants of survivors in the audience please stand? Let their presence be a testimony to life and the survival of the Jewish community. Please be seated.
Good afternoon. My name is Louise Jesse, and this is my dad, Dr. Edgar Inselberg of blessed memory. He was born in Athens, Greece in 1930, and at the time, Greece had a thriving Jewish community. By the end of the war, only 10% of this Jewish population survived. To say that I'm fortunate to be standing in front of you today is an understatement. Clearly, my dad survived, and incredibly, so did his brother and father. How they survived, while the vast majority did not, is not easily explainable. In part, it can be answered by my dad, for when he was asked in an interview on the subject, what advice would he give future generations if they were going through hard times, he said, and I quote, "I would tell them to keep their eyes open, do the best they can, and not to lose faith." He operated in the world with a lens of what might go wrong and prepared accordingly. Now, one might interpret this as being a pessimist, but in fact, he was a realist. There were times when his lens of what might go wrong did in fact occur, and ultimately we were prepared and did not suffer undue consequences. He also simply valued and appreciated life so much, not just his own, but all living things. He literally could not and would not kill a fly. In terms of his own life, he never took undue risk. Just accompanying me as a small child on a Ferris wheel made him green with anxiety. When he stated, "Do the best you can," he understood that sometimes things occur that are out of our control. No matter how wide you keep your eyes open to what is happening around you, no matter how well you prepare, sometimes bad things happen. That's when faith comes into play. You must not lose faith, he said. He never did, and we won't either, Dad. Thank you.
My name is Joe Peltz. I'm the grandson of Holocaust survivors Joseph and Rebecca Peltz. My wife Miriam is the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors Bill and Franka Neufeld. Our family's Holocaust history has had an enormous impact on my upbringing. To know that the death and destruction that the Nazis brought upon the Jews in Europe was personally felt by my family is something that is hard to comprehend. My family history has driven me to be a part of the greater mission of educating our youth about the horrors of the Holocaust and about the dangers of anti-Semitism and hate. I am currently the vice chair of the board of directors of the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Education Resource Center, and I am so proud of the important work that HERC's staff and volunteers do every day. I am grateful for the lessons that my grandmother, Rebecca Peltz, taught me, and the stories of pre- and post-war Poland that she shared with me. Given her past, my grandmother stressed the importance of family, education, and health. My grandmother loved to cook, and many of her pre-war stories involve cooking and sharing meals with her family. Most of my memories of my grandmother involve her being in the kitchen, cooking plätzlach, mandelbrot, matzo ball soup, and much more. I never met my grandfather, Joe, who I am named after, as he passed away 1 year before I was born. While I never met him through photographs and stories of him, I have always felt a strong connection to him. Shortly after the war, my grandparents and my father, Arnie, who was born almost immediately after the war, left Poland for the United States and built a beautiful family here in Milwaukee. Here's a photograph of my father, Arnie, and his parents, Joe and Rebecca. I will never be able to fully understand the horrors that my grandparents witnessed, but I am grateful to them for their will to survive and for everything that they provided our family.
Please join with me in the words, the hymn of the partisans. Sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg, kosch Himmeln bleiene verstehen beleuchtet. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Shoah. Svet apoigt on unser Trott mir seinen da. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Shoah. Svet apoigt on unser Trott mir seinen da. Von grünem Palmenland bis weißem Land von Schnee. Wir kommen on mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen ist, spritzt von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird auf unser Gwure, unser Mut. Und wo gefallen ist, spritzt von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Gwure, unser Mut. Es wird die Morgenson begilden uns dem Heind. Und der Nächten wird verschwinden mit dem Feind. Nur euch versammeln wird die Sonne in dem Kajor. Wie a Parol so gehen das Lied von Dor zu Dor. Nur euch versammeln wird die Sonne in dem Kajor. Wie a Parol so gehen das Lied von Dor zu Dor. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Es ist nicht kein Lied von a Vogel auf der Frei. Das hat a Volk zwischen fallen dicke Wend. Das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand. Das hat a Volk zwischen fallen dicke Wend. Das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand. Da sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Kosch Himmeln bleiene verstehen beleuchtet. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Shoah. Es wird abheugt an unser Trott mir seinen da. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Shoah. Es wird abheugt an unser Trott mir seinen da.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Samantha Abramson, Executive Director of the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Education Resource Center. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today, especially our survivors, who I'm grateful to count among my friends and who I look to for inspiration, especially in these moments, because of their bravery and resilience. Thank you for all that you do. We need these heroes among us now more than ever. I'm also grateful to the leadership of our committee, including our committee co-chairs, Leo Kleiner and Felicia Miller, and all who supported this year's commemoration, including the professional and volunteers of HERC, the JCC, and the Milwaukee Jewish Federation. The planning for today's commemoration has taken months, and I am so proud and so grateful for all that we've accomplished under their leadership. Before I introduce today's speaker, I want to take a few minutes to ground us in what Yom HaShoah represents. After all, there are many other Holocaust Remembrance Days. There's one on January 27th that we celebrate every year, International Holocaust Remembrance Day. There's also a commemoration we lead in this community for Kristallnacht in November. But Yom HaShoah is different. Let me tell you why. Yom HaShoah is closely connected to Israel and is commemorated every year alongside Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaTzmaut, which we'll commemorate later this week as a community. The 27th day of the Hebrew month of Nisan was chosen as the date of Yom HaShoah, specifically to coincide with the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, when Jews awaiting deportation in the Warsaw Ghetto chose to mount a brave and complex resistance against the Nazis and their collaborators in the spring of 1943. At the time, it was on the eve of Passover in the ghetto. While most of the Jewish fighters were eventually killed and deported, sent to death camps, their stand against persecution and their determination to live freely as Jews continues to inspire us today. Notably, an estimated 1/3 of the soldiers who fought for Israel's War of Independence in 1948 were Holocaust survivors, many the last of their family, who chose to fight for the future of the Jewish people. Yom HaShoah is both a remembrance and a pledge, a promise to continue that fight for our Jewish identity, the past, the present, and the future. This year is the 80th anniversary of the end of the Holocaust in World War II, when ghettos, concentration camps, death camps, towns, and whole cities were liberated by the Allied forces, including American GIs, some of them from Wisconsin, as you'll hear later in this program. Reflecting on the liberation of the Nazi camp Ohrdruf, then General Dwight Eisenhower said, "The things I saw beggar description. I made the visit deliberately in order to be in a position to give firsthand evidence of these things if ever, in the future, there developed a tendency to charge these allegations merely to propaganda." General Eisenhower had a profound vision in knowing the challenges we would face in 2025. We are living in a time of unprecedented Holocaust denial, distortion, and manipulation. A time when anti-Semitism, especially after October 7th of 2023, is rampant and unchecked in our society. It seems that everyone wants to talk about the Holocaust and draw comparisons from it for political or personal gain, but very few understand and devote their efforts to actually learning how centuries of anti-Semitism brought us to this genocide. Worse, we are living in a time when the facts of the Holocaust itself are being forgotten altogether. In this very moment, we are losing our Holocaust survivors. We are truly blessed, as was said before, here in Milwaukee, to have survivors like Eva, Edie, Werner, Al, and Peter, and so many others who have enriched our community and state through their education. We have educated 3 generations of students in this state, thanks to their efforts. It is no coincidence that in a recent study by the Claims Conference, Wisconsin ranked number 1 of all 50 US states in Holocaust awareness. My own daughter is a 4th-generation survivor, and my husband Stanton and I are fully aware that her generation will be the last to meet a Holocaust survivor. The work that we do at HERC and as a community, today and in the years to come, to document and preserve these survivor testimonies and stories and find creative ways to bring them into classrooms is critical in the fight against anti-Semitism and the future of Jewish identity. The mantle of responsibility, which our survivors have borne so fiercely and bravely for the last years, has now fallen onto all of us. If you are not yet a supporter of HERC's statewide work to bring the lessons of the Holocaust to 400+ school districts statewide, this is the year we really need you, and we hope you'll take this sacred responsibility on with us. Today's featured speaker is Jordan Bielski, the grandson of partisan leader Tuvia Bielski, the leader of the Bielski Brigade, a Jewish partisan group which saved the lives of more than 1,200 Jews during the Holocaust, as featured in the film Defiance in 2009. Jordan was introduced to Milwaukee at a HERC program last fall when we partnered with the art production company The Braid to produce Remembrance of Things Present, a production that explored the legacy and impact of the Holocaust on 2nd and 3rd generations, a subject matter that has great significance to HERC, to this community, to Yom HaShoah, and to our speaker. Today, Jordan will share his personal connections to the Holocaust, reflecting on the profound impact of his grandfather's heroism and the importance of bearing witness in standing up for the Jewish people. Jordan was born in New York City and now resides in LA, where he is active in the Jewish Federation of Los Angeles Young Leadership Program, the Community Leadership Institute. He is a professional actor who has appeared in numerous television shows and films on Epix, Hulu, and Apple+. As we listen to Jordan's story, I'd like us to consider the Jewish value of L'dor Vador. What actions and decisions are we making today as a community to ensure that we are equipped to educate future generations on the Holocaust so that they never forget? It is now my honor to welcome Jordan to the stage.
Hello, everybody. It is such an honor to be here back in the beautiful Jewish community of Milwaukee, and I really appreciate everybody having me here. I can attest that a lot of work went into making this program what it is today, and so far I couldn't be happier to be here. I was born in New York City. I was raised by a Brooklyn-born Ashkenazi father and an Israeli Sephardic mother. I went to Jewish schools. I went to a JCC summer camp, and eventually I went to college in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley. When I was a senior at Bard College, I found out that they were making a movie about my family, Defiance. So on a Sunday afternoon, not unlike today, I marched into my father's bedroom where he was taking a nap, where he assured me, don't worry, I wasn't sleeping. And I woke him up and I said, there is no way that you're going on this trip without me. And I insisted that they take me along, and he did. And on this trip to Lithuania and Belarus, Lithuania where they were filming, and Belarus where my family was from, I had one of the most eye-opening experiences of my life. It would be a seminal experience that would change the course and trajectory of the rest of my life. It was like Dorothy getting out of that house after the tornado and the whole world going from black and white into color. A story that I had known my entire life suddenly went from 2 dimensions into 3 dimensions. I knew that my grandparents were heroes, and I'm going to tell you about them just very shortly. But what I learned that day was so much more than just learning about their story and growing up in the shadow of it. I learned that not only did they save many people's lives, but they were going through every other experience that a person does, especially in times of trauma and war. They were hurt, they were scared, they were angry, and they were violent. And having an experience of being immersed within a 120-person production telling your story and suddenly realizing you didn't even know the magnitude of this story and how it's going to impact the rest of your life was absolutely incredible. And so, having studied philosophy and psychology and cognitive science in undergrad, I ended up going back to school after that and taking all theater classes. I was obsessed with being able to share humanity and to share the stories of people for the rest of my life. So naturally, I moved to Los Angeles, where I've been for the last 15 years. As was mentioned before, I work with the Jewish community there, with the Jewish Federation, and I also volunteer with different organizations. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a bit. But let's rewind a little bit to what it was growing up Belsky. My grandfather, Tuvia Belsky, here in the middle, and his brothers, Zush and Asel, as featured in the film Defiance, as many of you may have seen, they saved over 1,200 people's lives during the Holocaust. Can you imagine being put on this earth for a purpose and being called upon that purpose and fulfilling it? That is what it was like for my grandfather, who was around the age that I am now. And I'm going to tell you guys a lot about their story today, but before we do that, I want to paint a little bit of a picture of what it was like growing up as a Belsky in New York in the shadow of the Holocaust. If you guys want to find me in the photo, you can look for me. This is a picture of my grandmother, Lilka Belsky, and all of her grandchildren together. If you haven't guessed already, that's me, the theatrical kid down there in the corner. And growing up in New York was a very typical upbringing. We had Passover Seders at Safta Lily's house. We went to Holocaust memorial events at Sheepshead Bay, eventually in Yad Vashem. And my grandmother could be found many times in the kitchen with a cigarette on her lips, a telephone on her ear, speaking Yiddish for hours on end, and about a 50-foot cord from the phone, just where she would drag it all around the house. And to really paint the picture, I want to play you guys a short little video.
Sonia, tell me how you and Grandma know each other.
Oh, I came in, she was already in the forest, she was already a big partisan, and she went to fight the German, and she was a fighter, a wonderful fighter. And she said to me,
I didn't say that, Val.
She said to me, listen, you better go and rest up, because tomorrow you're going to fight the German. I said, are you kidding me? Not me.
I said, okay.
Listen. Kannst machen, du, wo du willst, ich mach was
What's
du
the
willst. That's a
comedy?
So what? That's a comedy. All life is a comedy.
In Florida, they call it the art couple.
They call you the odd couple? Who calls you the odd couple? Your friends?
In Florida, they can kiss my ass and hers together. And in Brooklyn, the same thing.
We know each other close to 60 years.
Not 60.
Low.
From 42 till now. Which one is it? What is the 8? 56 years.
It's not close to 60, it's only 56 years.
No, they're not there for years. In the forest was not so bad for us, because we had the commanders. And they took care very nicely on us.
Tuvia was the oldest of those three, born in 1906. He's an extraordinary figure, charismatic, intelligent, complex, with an almost a mystical aura about him. He was not at all a man who cowered before challenges.
Maybe he was
Very
older.
handsome. I mean, he looks...
What do you think, I'm stupid?
What?
Do I look stupid?
Why?
If he wouldn't be so handsome, he wouldn't be my husband.
It's amazing being able to watch these videos. My grandmother passed away in 2001, about 3 weeks after 9/11, and me and my entire family flew to Israel to bury her, and very special experience. My grandfather, Tuvia, on the other hand, passed away when I was about 6 months old. So I didn't know him so well personally, but I grew up with my family's stories my entire life. My grandfather was born in 1906 in a small town called Stankiewicz in Poland, modern-day Belarus. He was one of 12, and they were the only Jewish family in town. And it wasn't always the best for Jews around then, even before the war. But because of how many siblings there were, my grandfather thought it was important to let the neighbors know that you couldn't mess with the Belskis. And they knew if you messed with one of them, you messed with all of them. I could share many stories about them going out and defending their family's farm, but that's maybe perhaps for another day. Before the war, my grandfather, when he was young, about 10 years old, the Germans in World War I actually were stationed nearby, and he used to hang around the soldiers, and he learned how to speak German from them. Many years later, as a young man, he joined the Polish army and learned many valuable skills that would serve him later in life. This is a photo of my grandfather in the top left corner with some local policemen and a local businessman. He had very close relationships with a lot of people, which also would serve him later. And I want to paint a little bit of a picture for you guys of what we're talking about here today. In 1939, Germany and Russia agreed to split Poland in half. Germany controlled the West, and Russia controlled the East. And there were already rumors in eastern Poland about the atrocities being committed, but no one knew. Information was not as readily available as it was today, and it was very hard to discern fact from fiction. And so people debated for many years of what was happening. Fast forward 2 years, in June of 1941, Germany reneged on their treaty with Russia, and they started advancing eastward. My grandfather and his brothers, they weren't interested in debating the merits of what was true and what was not true and what they should do and whether or not the Germans could in fact commit the atrocities that they were being accused of committing. And they took zero chances, and they fled to the forest where they knew that they would be safe. And one by one, they would find their family members. They would sneak into the Novogrudek ghetto, which was not far where a lot of their family was. In fact, I was at the Novogrudek ghetto when I went on my family trip to Belarus, and there's stories, famous stories, of people digging underneath the barracks just so that they can escape. And just to kind of put the context together, there were probably many people during the Holocaust that broke out of ghettos, right, to escape. But where did they go? They had nowhere they could go, nowhere was safe. But when it came to my grandfather and his brothers, people knew that if you could make it to the forest, you would survive. And what started out as an attempt to just save their family and extended family suddenly grew. They had a resistance group of fighters, but not only that, they accepted the elderly, women, children, and they established an entire fighting force in the woods that would go on food missions, weapons missions. They collaborated with the Soviet guerrillas to sabotage railroads and sabotage Nazi outposts. They battled with local Polish collaborators that gave their positions away, and they also had many allies, former neighbors and friends that helped them find food and weapons and safety. They moved around many times over the course of 3 years of living in the forest, but they were able to establish a community. They had a synagogue, they had a tannery. The watchmaker from the local town fixed their weapons. The seamstress fixed their clothes. If you were not a fighter, you still were put to work, and everyone contributed to the community. And they ran it really like a kibbutz. My grandfather was definitely exposed to those, as a young man, he was exposed to early Zionist groups in Poland. And at the time, they knew about this communal work. So not only did his military experience from being in the Polish army as a young man serve him, but he also ran the community like a well-oiled machine. I want to share a little story about my great-grandfather, Alter Tickton, my grandmother's father. He came to the woods with my grandmother and contributed as a fighter. And he went on a mission one day and was killed and never came home. And my grandfather promised to take care of my grandmother Lilka, and they remained married for the rest of their lives. They stayed together for the rest of their lives. This is Tuvia and Lilka on the left, my grandparents. Up here on the right, you'll see Zush and Sonia. Sonia was in the video before, fighting with my grandmother. They were like sisters. They were best friends for almost 60 years. And on the bottom here is Asael and Chaya. After the war, Asael was drafted into the Russian army, and he was killed in action, and the family never saw him again. Chaya was pregnant with her first daughter. Their daughter, they named it after their father. Her name was Asaela. We call her Asi. Many of you guys might be familiar with Asi's story because her husband, Amnon Weinstein, is responsible for the Violins of Hope. And so, again, the Belsky family story goes deep. I want to share with you guys a little bit more about the legacy of growing up in the shadow of my grandparents' story. Play that.
I've been around already that the Russian army coming. The general by himself, he says he come from Moscow with the tanks. This is 1,000 miles, maybe less probably. He didn't find that one Jew. And I said to him, come over with me, I'll show you 1,000.
Torah tells us, he who saved one Jewish life is as if he had sustained the whole world. What then can one say to Tevya Bielski, who saved more than 1,000 lives? How many worlds has he sustained? How many generations yet to come will live and survive as Jews because of Tevya Bielski was ready to lay down his life together with the brave men and women of his brigade. And we are here to testify that we live, our children live, and generations from now they will speak the name Bielski with the respect that only those lives have been saved can speak.
I'm very proud to share my family's story with everybody today, and I think it's important to note the true impact that they've had on me throughout my life. It's estimated that there are tens of thousands of descendants from the 1,200 people that were saved in the forest. My entire life, I run into people who tell me, your grandfather saved my life. My whole life, I've seen that. I don't remember a time without knowing my family's story. And so, as we go through our event here today, I want to bring us back again to this experience that I had so many years later. My family and my cousins, my father, my uncle, my aunt, went on a pilgrimage to Belarus, and we saw the zemlankas that they lived in the forest, the little huts that they built into the earth. We saw the pieces of bark in the trees that they carved out where they put messages so that they could communicate with each other. We saw the Novogród ghetto where people dug through the barracks to be able to make it to the woods. And to be able to walk through these lands and see exactly where we come from, is an incredible experience. A short ride over the border into Lithuania, they were making a movie. And in this movie, by the way, I was a senior in college when I emailed the director, Ed Zwick, and I basically said, I'll drop everything, just let me be your assistant. He didn't let me do that, but they did dress me up as an extra, and this was my first experience ever on a movie set. And as I mentioned earlier, growing up, going to summer camp, Jewish summer camps out of the Rochester and Syracuse JCC, and going onto a movie set with 120 people all working together to serve this vision, it felt like home. It felt like the community I was looking for. And being able to be there as a part of that and being immersed in the story that I had known my whole life was an incredible experience. So naturally, after school, I moved to Los Angeles. I've been living there for about 15 years now. And this is my humble beginning, my first ever role in a movie. I had 0 lines, no residuals whatsoever. I will definitely be arguing with my agent about that. And all these years later, we went to a screening about a year later when the movie came out at the Heritage Museum, the Holocaust Museum in Manhattan, in lower Manhattan. About 150 Belsky descendants, all immediate descendants, came for the premiere. And here we all are. Actually, the photo is even much bigger than this, so we're missing a lot of it from there. If you can spot me, you get extra points. You come see me after. In later years, my grandfather, my grandmother, my great-uncle Zush, and great-aunt Sonia, and my great-aunt Chaya eventually all moved to Israel. I can share many stories with you there, but eventually my grandfather actually I will share one quick story there. The early IDF, the early Israeli fighters, when they were during the War of Independence, they gave my grandfather a post at the Haifa port. And they told him that it was his responsibility there, and they told him that they couldn't accept any more refugees until they knew what was going on. And my grandfather told them, I did not go through what I went through, where I did everything I could to save any Jew that I could find, to turn them away from the only place where they had to go. And he left his post, and he said goodbye to war forever. A few years later, they ended up moving to Brooklyn, which is how you get this. And over the years, like many Holocaust survivors, they didn't talk about their experience for a while. And it wasn't until the 70s and the 80s they started really getting recognition. And my father would tell stories all the time about how people would visit the house on Sundays and they just thought that they were family. But really they were all survivors from the forest, and they were friends, and they were like our extended family. And every Sunday they would get together, they would smoke cigarettes, they would drink vodka, and they would play cards. Many years later, my grandfather and my great-uncle and everybody, they raised money and they donated an ambulance to Magen David Adom in Israel. And so this photo is from the ceremony where they were doing that. And just to kind of bring this all home, fast forward many years later, after October 7th, about a year and a half ago, I had a friend in Los Angeles that started raising money also to Magen David Adom. And he ended up maximizing his donation matching through his employer and through another organization, and they were able to 8x their donations. And I helped them raise $100,000, which turned into $800,000 from donation matching, to donate 4 ambulances to Magen David Adom. And so just being able to stand in the shadow of these giants and share my stories with you all brings me immense pride, immense joy. And I just want to leave with a word of inspiration. Sometimes in our lives, we might not know what our experiences and our skills are building us towards. But just trust. In Hebrew, we say bitachon, divine trust, that everything that we do in this life serves our future. And hopefully we can use it to serve our community. And so whether we can give our time, our talents, or our treasures, a nice phrase I learned today, volunteering, giving your efforts, giving your talents, or giving your money. There are many different ways that we can show up to support our Jewish community and our families around us. So I just want to leave with a word of inspiration to do whatever we can and make sure that we're all bearing witness as we are today. And even for all of us being in this room today, this is so important for us to be able to contribute to the community and to ensure that our community thrives for many, many generations to come. Thank you so much for having me today, and appreciate it.
Ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, be'emunah shelema, beviat HaMashiach, ve'af al pi she'yitmamea, im kol ze ani ma'amin, im kol ze achake lo, v'chol yom she'yavo. Ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, be'emunah shelema, beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach, ve'af al pi she'yitmamea, im kol ze ani ma'amin, im kol ze achake lo, bechol yom she'yavo.
Shalom. My name is George Strick. In 1946, when I was 12 and living in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania with my parents brought over a woman named Irene from Europe to live with us. Irene was the daughter of my mother's brother. She was the sole survivor, the remnant of my mother's family. I noticed that during our meals, Irene would put a spoon, a bowl, a slice of bread, a potato, and other things into a pocket. I asked my mother about this. I also asked my mother about the tattooed numbers on Irene's arm. My mother replied, because they didn't talk about those things in those days, my mother replied that Irene had a hard time during the war. I was not satisfied with that answer. So one day, when my mother and Irene were out of the house, I went snooping into Irene's room, and hidden in the drawers and in the pockets and in other places were the spoons, the bowls, the potatoes, and the other things she had taken. It was not until much later in my life, when I studied about the Shoah and taught about the Shoah, that I realized and learned that Irene was still in a survival mode, and that I learned and understood the significance of the tattoo. I learned that in the camps, that without a bowl, without a pot, without a spoon, a person could not survive or live. 2 years after Irene joined my family, we moved to New York City, and Irene went her way, and we, our family, went our way. I'm not sure where she went, what she did, we lost track. However, almost 80 years later, her story and this story still has a major impact on my life, which I have shared with my students. Thank you.
Each year, we invite a member of our interfaith community to offer a few words. When we partner with our brothers and sisters of different faiths, we are stronger. When we learn, study, gather, and educate, we break down the barriers that separate us. Please welcome Father Ziggy Moraviec of the Sacred Heart Seminary and School of Theology.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Father Zbigniew Morawiec. I am a member of the Congregation of the Priests of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. I was ordained a priest in 1990. I come from a small village in South Poland. From my earliest years, the subject of the Holocaust was present in my consciousness. Near my family home lived 2 survivors from Auschwitz death camp, and often talked about the horrors of that place and that time. However, the real shock, the moment from which I never again freed myself from the thought of what happened in this place and many others like it, was my first visit to Auschwitz. The first time I went to Auschwitz was in early 90s. I remember that the guide was one of the surviving prisoners. His testimony was overwhelmingly powerful. Listening to him, it was difficult not to repeat in one's soul the question that Primo Levi put in the title of his book, Se questo è un uomo, if this is a man. Since that day, I went to this place many more times with various groups, most often with my fellow priests from various countries. I want to mention my last trip to Auschwitz in the company of my friend from Brazil. After a few hours, we arrived at the ruins of the crematorium. We were tired. My friend sat down on the concrete slabs warmed by the midday sun. And at one point, she burst into spasmodic crying for several minutes. For many hours, no words were spoken. What did I take away from my visits to sites of Holocaust in Poland, and how did those visits impact me and my role as priest? First of all, I realized that man is a being who needs metaphysical grounding, that in making life choices, especially those that determine the type of relationship with others, he must subject them to ethical and moral judgment. The question, how was it possible, is followed by another one. What can be done so that it never happens again? And further, what is my role and my personal responsibility in this matter? For more than 25 years, I have worked as an educator and lecturer in Catholic seminaries. For the past 10 years at Sacred Heart Seminary and School of Theology in Hollis Corners. This gives me a special opportunity to sensitize future leaders of Catholic communities to the issues of promoting the dignity of every human person, recognizing the rights of every ethnic or religious group. It is with satisfaction that I would like to mention Sacred Heart Seminary and School of Theology of Theologies Alexander and the important role it plays in the overall formation process of our students. It is our highest priority to sensitize our students to any form of prejudice against others, any form of racism or anti-Semitism. I was born in Poland, a country that before World War II was home to some 3.3 million Jews. By the end of the war, in 1945, about 380,000 had survived. Comparing these two numbers gives us an idea of the scale of the tragedy that took place at the time. I'd like in this moment to make some names of places of this tragedy. The 6 death camps, I will say these names with Polish pronunciation, it was in Poland, so, but I hope you will recognize what kind of place I'm talking about. Chełmno, Bełżec, Sobibór, Treblinka, Majdanek, and Auschwitz-Birkenau. I silently bow my head in homage to all the victims of this tragedy. Never again. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Joanne Robb Roberts, and this is my sister, Barbara Robb Resnick. Our father, Victor Robb, was born on July 14th, 1923, in Vienna, Austria. He lived a happy and comfortable childhood with his parents and his older sister, until March 1938, when they watched Hitler and his troops being welcomed by their neighbors. After Kristallnacht, they became desperate to leave by any means. So in August 1939, at age 16, our father said goodbye to his parents and boarded a kinder transport train and went to England. Distant cousins agreed to send affidavits, and miraculously, all four were eventually reunited in Chicago. Then, in February 1943, he was drafted into the US Army. In December 1944, he was deployed back to the Europe that he had fought so hard to escape. Due to his fluency in German and Hungarian, he was made a special agent in the Central Intelligence Corps. In this position, he and his unit liberated several concentration camps. Here are some of his own words. I was put into a position where I was one of the first people to enter and liberate Ohrdruf and Buchenwald concentration camps. That moment was one of the worst and most severe moments in my life, which I still cannot forget. Miraculously, we found that some people were still alive. We immediately got our medics to help to try to save their lives. The soldiers gave them food and tried to comfort them. Unfortunately, they could save very few. That picture is engraved in my mind.
We always knew that our father, had escaped Nazi Germany, but knew few details of how or about his military service. After attending a Kinder Transport Association conference in 2000, he began sharing his story with others, including us. This helped him lessen the nightmares. Yet, telling the stories, especially of what he saw at the concentration camps, were difficult and emotional. Our father was haunted by guilt, wondering, why did I survive through so many miracles? Yet he was also grateful and upbeat and optimistic about life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My heart is full, as I am deeply grateful to be here with all of you in this shared space of community and remembrance, a solidarity that for me feels especially meaningful in these uncertain, unprecedented times in the history of our own nation's democracy. I am Jody Habish-Sinekin, and I have the honor of presenting the winners of this year's Holocaust Art and Essay Contest, supported by the Mimi and Bob Habish Donor Fund, which is for over 30 years has played a meaningful part in our community's Yom HaShoah commemoration. This year, too, all 6 of the contest winners will be flown to Washington, D.C. to take part in a tour and an experience in the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, as well as other events related to that. Over these many years, we together, and I see these same faces year after year after year, fortunately, we together have shared the experiences of witnessing the way young people can internalize and personalize the lessons of the Holocaust once they are given the opportunity to do so. Their heartfelt reflections offer proof and hope that next generations will help us preserve the memory of all the Jewish people, families, and communities lost in the Shoah. This year, we received a total of 289 contest submissions from 28 schools across Wisconsin, 4 times the number of submissions from 2024, thanks to HERC's increased outreach to the dedicated teachers across Wisconsin who in turn successfully engaged their students on the lessons of the Holocaust. Of these 289 entries, 6 winners were chosen, 3 written entries, and 3 art winners. Students were asked to answer the prompt, why is it important to remember the Holocaust? How can remembrance shape our understanding of the past and influence the future? It is my honor to share images and excerpts from the winning entries today. We are fortunate that 2 students are here with us today, Kaylin Lubourd and Yael Steigman. I did not give them much advance notice on this because of time constraints. Yael, I know that you're here. If you could come forward. Kaylin, are you here as well? She's not here. I will read Kaylin's piece. Yael, come join me up here. Thank you. Thanks. First for the winning art images, I would like you to see them on the screen. I understand that they're going to kind of try to coordinate them a bit with this, but if not, you have an opportunity back at home to go on HERC's website and see the images. This one here, as you see, is Silent Survivor by Stella Brandt, an 8th grade student from Shorewood Intermediate School. What is worthy of your time is going on the website and reading the artist's statement, because it really does give a picture into their soul. Thank you. This one is branded by Kyla Jones, an 8th grade student at Phillips Middle School. And this, entitled Innocent to the Eye, is by Isla, I'm better maybe if I pronounce that correctly, Mishuga? In 8th grade at Osceola Middle School. Very cool. Thank you. Now to the winning essays. Both Kaylin and Yael authored winning writing submissions, as did another 12th grade student at Arrowhead High School, Nico Sylvestre Denk. Kaylin, who is not here, is a 12th grade student at Arrowhead Union High School as well, and she authored the poem 3 Minds, which voices the perspective of first a Holocaust survivor, next what I would call a righteous Gentile, and lastly, she called it in her stanza a coward, but I think it most spoke to me as a bystander, and that is for all of you to have your interpretation. The one that I was hoping to read out loud, actually, Yael, would you do it for us? Could you read this?
Sure. Coward. I stood among them, uniform stiff on my shoulders, a puppet in a play written by monsters. Orders barked, boots matching in unison, my heart pounded out of step. I saw their hands clutch one another, a father shielding his child, a mother whispering a final prayer, as if God still lived in this place. I wanted to look away, to unsee the fear, the grief, the silent pleas, but I did nothing. Cowardice disguised as duty. The smoke rose, the world turned, and I stood in line, a man who knew the truth and still did nothing.
So you can see how these students are very much taking the lessons of the Holocaust from their teachers, putting them inside themselves, and coming up with these reflections. And Yael is no different. Yael Steigman is an 8th grade student at the Milwaukee Jewish Day School, where my 4 children went as well, whose essay is entitled Why It Is Important to Remember the Holocaust, stands out as one of the most brilliant, well-researched essay I have read in these 30 years. It is outstanding. Please be sure that all of you to read this again later today in its entirety. But Yael, I was hoping that you too could read an excerpt. It's quite long, of course, so I know you're thinking, uh-oh. But if you could just read this excerpt, I tried to pull out what would flow here.
The U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum teaches that the Holocaust was preventable and showed the warning signs that many civilians ignored that allowed the Nazi Party's views to escalate. Learning this allows us to see what could have happened or who could have been saved had early action taken place. One of the best ways to reduce the chances of genocide is to address the root causes of violence and conflict: hatred, intolerance, racism, discrimination, tyranny, and a dehumanizing public discourse that denies whole groups of people their dignity and their rights. Remembering the Holocaust allows us to understand how it happened and how we can make sure it doesn't happen again.
Congratulations, Yael, and to all the winners and those folks who supported this excellent effort. I have heartfelt appreciation for all who participated, the teachers, and our community members who participate year after year in this program. So thank you, and congratulations again. Beautiful job. Thank you.
Today, we are sharing an experience that future generations will not have. As the last Holocaust survivors are living witnesses to this dark chapter in the story of the Jewish people pass on, we are all left to grapple with the challenge. How do we ensure that their memory, their stories, and their life lessons live on? This is why HERC works every day to ensure that Wisconsin classrooms have the highest quality resources to provide Holocaust education. One central component to achieve this is HERC's Speakers Bureau, a group of dedicated Holocaust survivors and descendants of Holocaust survivors who travel around Wisconsin to visit schools, churches, synagogues, and other community groups to tell their story of survival during the Holocaust. All Speaker Bureau visits are entirely free of charge. We are now pleased to welcome Marissa Piper, a teacher who has exhibited excellence in Holocaust education and has welcomed many members of HERC Speakers Bureau to her classroom.
I'm glad I didn't wear the same outfit. But I will say, as I looked at that picture, how much I missed Howard. I've had many speakers over the years, but I may have been the closest with Howard, quite honestly, as he reminded me a little bit of my own father. So my name is Marissa Piper, and I'm very honored to be here with you today to speak on this 80th anniversary of the end of the Holocaust. I've been teaching high school history for 31 years, a variety of courses. And my first 25 years were at this rural high school, actually about an hour plus away from here, East Troy, small community. And the last 6 years, I've been at Kettle Moraine High School. And although I've taught many different courses, what might be the most close to my heart is teaching human rights and civil rights as they intertwine with history, because I believe that those topics are what teach us and our children to be better human beings. As I developed resources over the last 31 years on the Holocaust, and I'll let you know when I began, there was not much there. It was the obligatory film, maybe the Warsaw Ghetto. There wasn't much. And as I was introduced to HERC actually through Philip Freund, and first actually through a family member of his, and then later through Philip as he was a speaker in the bureau here at HERC. The Holocaust Education Resource Center over the years has been able to give me countless trips, speakers, educational programming, and seminars that have not only been attended by myself, but my students, all through the generous support of HERC. This couldn't be done without all of you who support HERC. Love, respect, courage, character, community, leadership, and inspiration
These are the words that I would use to describe the Holocaust speakers that I've brought into my students' lives. They represent the life experience that a textbook cannot give, nor can I deliver. They are living history. As a result, my students have grown in self-reflection, compassion, empathy, perspective, resilience, and a connection to something much greater than themselves. An understanding that even in the darkest moments, strength and hope are powerful tools for survival, and that with resiliency, people can thrive after trauma, moving forward and adapting and having fulfilling lives. The importance and power of testimonials in the history classroom moves far beyond the textbook, and it refreshes the listener's own commitment and thoughts on prejudice, bigotry, discrimination, and anti-Semitism. It can be transformative and inspire to move one beyond their own self, and sometimes to a call to action. This human connection brings relevancy to the importance of humanity. I would like to thank and acknowledge the survivors and the family members that have given of themselves to make the education of the Holocaust an essential part of learning in my classroom. Philip Freund, Susie Fono, Howard Melton, Eva Zeret, Edith Schaefer, Peter Stephen Shelley, Arlene Peltz, and Sue Bernstein. Thank you.
I'm Cantor Richard Newman, and it's my honor to be part of this program today, and I would ask you to please rise for El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamoromim, Hametzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'malot Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazehirim, L'nishmot Kol Acheinu B'nei Yisrael Shenitbechu b'Shoah, Anashim, Nashim v'taf, Shenechnuku v'shenesrafu v'shenehergu, Shemasru et nafsham al kiddush Hashem, Began Eden tehei menuchatam, Bal harachamim, Hastirem beseter knafecha leolamim, Utzror bitror hachayim, Et nishmotehem, Adonai hu nachalatam, V'yanuchu v'shalom al mishkevotehem, ונאמר Amen. And please remain standing for the Kaddish Yatom, for the mourners' Kaddish.
I'm Rabbi Steve Adams, and I'm honored to be here along with all of you as we remember those who perished in the Shoah, along with all those who have been victims of hateful violence. Their memories are with us as we honor their lives with the words of the mourners' Kaddish. We say, Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah, B'alma divrach Chirutei v'yamlich Malchutei, B'chayechon v'yomeichon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'yimaru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal Shemei d'Kudashah b'richu. Le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran b'alma v'yimaru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru Amen. May God grant peace to those who mourn and comfort all the bereaved among us as we say, Amen.
Good afternoon. My name is Noah. I am the community shlicha in Milwaukee. I am a third-generation descendant of Holocaust survivors. My grandfather Moshe, of blessed memory, and my grandmother Eva, may she live a long life. It is a privilege to participate in this meaningful and important event. Israel's official Holocaust Remembrance Day is called Yom HaZikaron LaShoah VeLaGvura, the Holocaust and Heroism Remembrance Day. The emphasis on heroism alongside the Holocaust teaches us something about Israeli society in its early days. The Holocaust, with its scale and horrors, was so difficult to comprehend that stories of resistance and heroism seems to offer a kind of comfort. Within the Israeli cultural context, there have been several evolutions in their perceptions of heroism during the Holocaust. In the early years after the Holocaust, heroism was recognized almost exclusively in one form, that of armed resistance. We learned about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, about the partisans in the forests, about those who fought with weapons against the forces of evil. It was a clear, visible, physical kind of heroism. In the reality of those days, between the struggle for independence led by the generation of 1948 and the attempt to shape the image of the new Jew in Israel, it was difficult to make space, to listen to, and to contain the complexity of Holocaust survivors' stories. But in 1961, with the opening of the Eichmann trial, something profound shifted in the Israeli collective memory. Tzivia Lubetkin, one of the leaders of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, a symbol of resistance who later co-founded the Ghetto Fighters Museum with her husband Yitzhak Zuckerman, took the witness stand. When asked by the prosecutor to speak about her bravery, she answered, "We knew we had no chance to win in the military sense as understood today. But despite their strength, we knew that in the end we would defeat them, we, the weak ones. Because that was our strength. We believed in justice, in humanity, in a different kind of society." Tzivia and her comrades had a goal: to preserve the dignity and humanity of the youth they were guiding. For the first time during the trial, other voices were also heard. More than 100 testimonies of survivors who didn't carry weapons, who didn't escape, but simply survived. They stood on the witness stand and spoke of hunger, of humiliation, of unimaginable pain. The long silence in Israel around survivors began to shift to listening. As the year passed, hearts opened to more stories, ones that weren't told right away. Stories of those who survived, who hid, who protected others, who shielded children, who taught Hebrew underground, who played music in the ghettos, who wrote poetry, who insisted on holding on to their humanity, even when humanity itself seems to vanish. Today we know heroism during the Holocaust had many faces. It was in a whisper, a tear, a look. It was in the decision to rise for one more day. It was in their refusal to give up hope. Thanks to this broader understanding, we can truly honor the memory of those who were murdered and the past of those who lived, who survived, who carried the pain and chose, despite everything, to go on. Heroes lived among us then, and heroes live among us still. I want to invite our Shinshinim, Maya and Amit, to join me on the stage. And I invite you all to rise for Hatikva.
יהודי הומיה ולפתי מזרח קדימה עין לציון צופיה עוד לא עמדה תקוותנו שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון
Thank you. Have a seat.
The strains of Hatikva, the hope, remind us that even as we mourn and remember, we have hope. Thank you. We are honored that you joined us for this year's Yom HaShoah commemoration. On behalf of the Yom HaShoah Committee, the JCC, HERC, and the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, I want to thank all of you for participating in our Yom HaShoah commemoration. A special thank you to our featured speaker, Jordan Belsky, and again to all of the volunteers, participants, and staff who made today possible. We look forward to being together again right here at the JCC this Tuesday, April 29th at 6:30 p.m. for the Yom HaZikaron commemoration, and then on Sunday, May 4th at 2 p.m. for Yom HaAtzmaut and the Walk for Israel.
Before leaving today, please take a moment to sign the banners in the back of the room, and also to join us outside the PEC entrance at Pinat HaTikva. There, you may place a stone and remember those who are no longer with us. May the memories of the righteous always be for a blessing. Thank you.